Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. We are here at HR Tech 2025. I know Ben and Brendten are very excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Always an adventure, this conference. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with me and taking some time to learn about what the newest innovations are at FAMA. So, why don't I just let you guys introduce yourselves and a little bit about your backgrounds, and then we'll get into it.
Sure.
So, Brendten, let me start with you.
Sure. I'm Brendten Eickstaedt. I'm the CTO here at FAMA. Been here about 5 years and worked my way up through engineering roles and ended up running technology and product.
Awesome. Ben?
Ben Mones, founder, CEO, FAMA, 10 years. Started the thing from chief janitor to sales guy to product manager to CTO to CEO. Terrible CTO. I was terrible CTO.
You weren't that bad.
That was pretty bad. And yeah, happy to be back on my second AIQ pod.
Excellent.
Or is it podcast?
Yeah.
YouTube video?
There's a video on YouTube. We'll have a link to. We'll cross post so that we have a link to it. But Ben and I caught up last year at this show to hear about all the great things that FEMA had been working on. We got into a little bit of a conversation around social analytics, and gathering social exhaust, social capital for positive reasons, not just for checking if someone's going to be, a bad seed. So yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. So I invited Ben back with a proper CTO in tow, I should say. So yeah, I guess I'm curious to hear what you guys have been building and working on over the last year, and what's driving some of those decisions as we see obviously technology evolving at a breakneck pace. So Brendten, you want
Sure.
to take that?
Yeah. So we've been working on adding a lot of enterprise features, things that are going to be useful for more of our enterprise customers, single sign-on and things like that. But then also expanding our sources, so adding more sources, things like that. We've just added YouTube, so we're now able to do YouTube videos, and we've just recently launched global languages, so we're able to do things in non-English languages now, and just been spending a lot of time adding features and functionality our customers are looking for.
Awesome. Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, no, Brenton's right. I mean, we're continuing, I think, to innovate. I think that's kind of the key piece, which is like, as a market leader, I think in a small market, albeit, you can have an opportunity to kind of like rest on your laurels and the solution that you've built. But we kind of obsess, we call it a productive paranoia at FAMA, where we kind of obsess about like not just why we're winning, but why we're losing, right? And what are like the features, what are the win themes that are driving, output for us in the marketplace and helping us get to where we want to be. So constantly just investing in the solution, as Brent said, whether it's sources, new types of screening. We have monitoring, called FAMA Pulse, which is really designed to help kind of look at your existing employee base instead of kind of the wide net, like we talked about in our last podcast, where you look at things like intolerance, harassment, that kind of thing. We're exclusively focused on things that sort of breach the regulatory environment. And what's changed so think like workplace violence, criminal behavior, et cetera. What's changed since our last conversation is that there are certain regulatory bodies, the FCA in the UK, which sort of governs financial services firms, similar to kind of our SEC, laid out guidance that is typically signal for the rest of the world that banking, financial institutions are responsible for any breaches of the regulatory environment that happen on social media between employees. So we're starting to see this just massive shift now, I think, of employers and regulators who are recognizing that risk does appear online, and we continue to kind of build tools and technology to help customers address that and stay one step ahead.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. One of the themes that I've been talking a lot about on the show is around this concept of responsible innovation, right? And so understanding that organizations need to protect the organization from all types of risk, which you guys are clearly doing, but also sort of understand enough about AI and related technologies such that they know where to potentially apply them so they can bring ideas to the rest of the organization. And so you guys kind of have that sort of dual role even within, FAMA, not just, what you might, bring to solve some of the client challenges that you talked about, Brent, but it seems like you guys are uh, you're playing both offense and defense for yourself, and then helping organizations think more deeply about that. And I imagine the threats, and you kind of alluded to this, Ben, like that there's like more threats out there, and the more people uh, are using AI perhaps irresponsibly, that increases the exposure that people may have, and it could be new threats. I mean, do you see like new cyber threats in terms of like whether it's deep fakes and other things that people need to be cognizant of?
Yeah, I think, we, I'm sure Brenton's going to roll his eyes when I say what I'm about to say, but, one of the things that we've seen a lot as of late is, we kind of focus on this, like once somebody is in your company or you've interviewed them, to your point, kind of making sure that not just they represent sort of the characteristics and values that they think they do that represent the company, right? And that's really our bread and butter. Being able to go to an employer and say, hey, look, you care about the analog world, managing workplace violence, you have a inclusivity policy, you want to make sure people aren't acting intolerant towards one another. That's really what we do, our core focus. But we're hearing customers ask us more now, to your point around threats, is like we're seeing an explosion. I think it's no secret of identity fraud and people who are applying to jobs now, posing and pretending to be someone else. And there's so many tools and technology that get you kind of like in that last mile. It's a really crowded space right now, identity management.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in that, like, hey, this is John, we want to hire John. Okay, John, send your picture of your ID and a selfie of you holding the ID. We're going to do the facial biometrics and all that. And that space, very crowded, lots of innovation there and big companies who are doing it. What we're starting to get questions on is like, can you use a person's online identity before you can interview them to determine if they're a real person or not? So that's some of the stuff Brent's team, I mentioned the roll eyes comment because we got something in the hackathon here, but it's something we're kind of envisioning and working on. So
Yeah, I think we're making good progress on it. It's not an easy challenge to solve,
Yeah.
but it's a huge problem out there. We're hearing it over and over and over again from our customers and our prospects, just asking for this level of ability to look at online data and online presence and determine this is really a person and this is the person that they say they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we can catch that even earlier in the process.
Well, that's the idea, right? Because it's like, you spend, I think, not just the time and money and energy on interviewing people that aren't actually real and are a North Korean bot farm or something like that, or someone who's just simply posing to get that first paycheck and does that 5 companies at a time, goes away for 2 weeks, comes back under a new identity and does it. There are some companies, one called like Strider AI, that does some really interesting stuff around like resumes and looking at the metadata within a resume and determining kind of, if that IP address is logged in the metadata anywhere from a known North Korean or, PRC location. But we're starting to see some of these questions of like, how do you intervene earlier in the process? Because it's not just the time and money, but you divulge confidential information as part of an interview process, whether you like it or not, whether you're intentional about it or not. You can learn a lot about a company through its interview process.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much that the average person just doesn't think about or they take for granted when they go to apply to a job. It's bad enough that you've got all this competition for real people, and now you might actually get rejected because whatever they set this arbitrary. I'm only gonna review the first 100. I've already found my 10, and I'm gonna move forward.
Sure.
And everyone else gets the shaft,
Yeah.
basically. And so, I mean, that would be one sort of benefit of catching this even earlier because they're stripped out of the pool as has been limited. So no, it's really interesting. What in terms of new industries, new geographies? I mean, if the language support that you mentioned, Brendten, like, is that How many languages are you up to now? And
So we're at 89 right now. 30 are the major global languages, and then another, section or the lesser spoken languages. But yeah, 89 total.
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's no way I could name.
Yeah.
We used to do it with it just sort of shows, I think, what AI can offer companies like ours. But we used to use for foreign languages like keyword matching. So we tell customers, hey, you have all these foreign languages you want to screen for, you want to create a matrix of our flags, put it into a foreign language keyword. Now we've been able to take that same concept we've had on English, which is basically models that we've trained on. Here's what intolerance look like, threats look like, harassment looks like, and now applying that, same level of specificity and accuracy, to 90 other, languages that are out there. So
Yeah.
it's super cool, not without its bumps and bruises along the way. I think when you innovate at a rapid pace, sometimes things get a little herky jerky. But we got customers that understand, I think, the value of innovation and pace setting, right, and being able to keep you one step ahead of the challenges that you have, or maybe didn't know that you had.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we released it in beta because it's one of those things that it's definitely uh, a newer technology and a newer use case of AI. So it's something that we have to make sure that we're doing right. The best way to do that is to get it out there, learn from it.
Right. So you have, I imagine you have a lot of beta customers that are giving you feedback, and they're pretty sort of entrenched into your product development. No, that's great. Um, what else? What else is on the horizon?
Yeah, for us, we're kind of riding this like interesting adoption wave right now where, I'd say in the first 5 or 6 years, we started the company in 2015. The first 5 or 6 years was a lot of kind of like early adopters or people that were kind of like reacting to something that happened in their company that they realized after the fact could have been identified earlier through pre-employment screening using, online identity and social media. But now I think we've seen just kind of employers begin waking up, if you will, kind of en masse to the fact that, half of their workforce today is Gen Z and millennial. These are people that are all digital natives. You extrapolate to the world population, Gen Alpha, millennials, and Gen Z represent 70% of the global population. And so employers have just kind of identified like if everybody who works for me and is in my workplace, is spending time on Discord and TikTok and LinkedIn and not like hanging out at the water cooler or honestly going to happy hour or doing anything like that where they're connecting, like those are still areas where employees are interacting, employees are, forging and building relationships. And for like 98% of the time, it's totally cool, right? But you do see those moments, just like you track in the analog environment, aberrations from the norm or from the standard. So I would just say what we're seeing is kind of like a readying of mass adoption that's beginning to show its signals. And you kind of mentioned industries, but financial services, huge vertical for us, huge industry. I lump kind of business services into that too. So Big Four consulting, audit, tax, that kind of thing. Healthcare, think like critical infrastructure, critical industry, oil, gas, energy, and then the public sector, which is really interesting as of late. So just in the past year in California, to be a police officer, you have to have a social media check. To have a concealed carry permit, you need a social media check. So we're just seeing this kind of like new customer cohort come in that maybe hasn't experienced the pain before, so they don't really understand the way the product works or how it operates. We're doing a lot of education at the front of the funnel using, opportunities like this at HR Tech to connect with our audience, buyers and users and partners and all that. And yeah, pushing them to kind of a new way of screening. So that's sort of been like the story and, putting some more resources behind the engine to make that happen.
Nice.
And we're also seeing, from a regulatory and legal perspective too, there's actually been, court cases recently that holding employers accountable for misconduct that's happening online, harassment and things like that.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
we're starting to see the critical mass come together. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of, I guess, between what you guys are doing and everything that's sort of required jurisdictionally with regulations around, AI use and some of the risks there, even protecting employer brand, reputation, like it shouldn't be just guided by legislation. You should do the right thing. You should be a trusted, partner. Customers are going to start asking you tougher questions. So I feel like you have a general sort of momentum towards people thinking about what are our insurance policies in general about, uh, protecting the organization from all kinds of threats. I mean, a couple of years ago, we would never have thought that people were going to just, like you said, North Korean bot farms and people infiltrating just to get credentials inside, systems and stuff like that. And so, certainly not, a black swan event. It's just a lot of people just don't think multiple steps ahead into, well, if I were, I guess it's part of like red teaming, right? Like how are you gonna, how do you think and forecast all of these ways in which technology could be misused?
Totally.
So I think you guys are in a good, spot there as people, try to, build up those insurance policies.
Yeah, for sure. And it's changing. I was just saying, sorry, it's changing in real time too. I mean, like I depending upon when this goes live and when we're talking about it right now, but just last week was, the killing of Charlie Kirk, right? So now we're getting all these questions from employers of like, hey, what do I do about my employees endorsing political violence, right? Like how does that reflect on our culture? How does it reflect on our brand, on our workplace, sort of guidance or criteria around, appropriate behavior, what's in your handbook, right? And so I think you're going to start seeing kind of these, as more and more things happen online or begin online, that blend their way into what I'll say the more analog way and the way that we interact. Like you look at JD Vance just this past week saying from the White House, hey, if you find people are endorsing political violence on social media, tell their employer about it, right? And so you have now this kind of inference and injection from both the political public, and private sector, I think, that are changing the way that employers are thinking about their responsibility to not just, let's just keep in mind what this is about. Sure, it's about your brand and your culture, but it's about your stakeholders, your shareholders, and your customers, right? It's like, what are the things that are going to continue to drive, positive commercial momentum for you as an organization? And as these examples appear and risk manifests itself online, it's only going to bring that nexus to what, we're doing even closer. It's a minefield, to kind of navigate for a company like us, but, has one that's been like super interesting and captivating.
Yeah, no, really interesting. You just made me think about universities. And
big cohort of ours. Big cohort.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you say that, is it for their own like hiring of faculty, or is it?
We don't do anything with students today. So we do all the vetting of like presidents of organizations. We have a product called FAMA 360, which looks at like civil litigation. If you're in academia, if you've had papers that have been retracted that you've published, that kind of thing. But we do general, I would say, like corporate screening for non-tenured faculty across the board.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, you covered a lot.
Yeah, I think we're good now. Appreciate you welcoming us back onto the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.